Hey, good still morning here in Dallas. Welcome to Second Lap. Current update about 35,200 miles on my feet, and we're coming down to I think it's like 42 days, and I'll be at 10 years. So I think I'm officially going to make a request of Google to say, hey, this is what your step count was at this date so that I can give out my gift and all that kind of stuff. There's a contest I have, Kelly, that's what is my mileage at 10 years. So I give that sort of update. And this show, welcome to a second lap. The show is about what I learned on lap one around the globe. And I've invited like one of my closest friends. Kelly, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Kelly Rodocker. I've been friends with Rob now for, and I don't know, what are we going on about 18 years, somewhere in there?
I thought it was 22, but maybe it feels like 18.
Yep. We were introduced by a mutual coworker back in our AT&T days. So I guess maybe a shout out to Charles Hergert for getting us together. But yeah, and Rob and I both live in the Dallas area. We live about, if any of you know how big Dallas is, Rob and I live probably about an hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes apart, which is just the Dallas part, not the Fort Worth part. So
Right.
we've known each other for a while, and we've gone through a lot of different personal as well as professional iterations together. So
Yeah. Yeah. So you're stealing most of my thunder.
uh,
Kelly and I've been friends for a long time. I wrote on here, I usually write just a couple of show notes and I'll read them real quick before the rain washes them off. So I'm walking in the rain. Optimism, growth, identity, and love for, any of the prompts I may need for our conversation. Back to knowing each other for that long. You've, watched me go through a bunch of stuff. I've watched you go through things. We've worked as partners, co-workers. You were briefly my manager before the company that I followed you over to and stayed for about another year. Like, went through one of those what was political things. But we could talk about that as well. Sort of lessons learned as we were doing this. And I was going to say, you've experienced like the whole 10 years of me doing this and all of the
yeah.
lessons sort of that I've gone through myself, just different things. But anyways, one of the things was identity. I was going to say we've probably self-identified as salesmen for a long time or a big part of our lives, or looked at our sales manager, or whatever the title was at the time that made you most proud, like lead of the largest telecommunication company in the world, reseller group of whatever, and multiple whatever. You've done really well, and you've always identified as a sales guy. And yet, with life's sort of turns, you're currently not a sales guy. So how do you sort of identify? What do you call or consider yourself as? Like, how did you identify?
Well, I would have agreed with the first part, right? I've been a sales guy, and maybe look back at life a little bit. My dad was a sales guy and sold cars his entire life, right? So
Yep.
lots of different iterations there. When I was in high school, starting to think about going to college or a career or whatever, I kind of mentally said to myself, I would never be a sales guy. I watched my parents probably around financial ups and downs, which most salespeople go through, and that was probably the foundation of why I said I would never be a sales guy. And when I was young, sales guys had kind of a negative connotation. Wasn't until I got into the industry that I learned the professional side of things. But yeah, I've been a sales guy for probably 30 years of my life, and all of that has been in the high tech space,
Okay.
hardware, software, channel partners offering services to that. So that I would identify myself as a sales guy, and I've been an individual contributor. I've been a manager. I've been a director. I was a VP at one point. A bunch of different titles that really
Sure.
just mean you're selling something, and you may or may not be managing some people along the way, right?
Yeah,
So
and I was gonna say is you sort of learn about, yes, you have that interaction, you have that opportunity. Um, yeah, kind of lost my train of thought. Back to the identify as a sales guy. Um, you have, an adaptability perspective or quality as we talk. One of the life things I was going to check up on you is you're now venturing off into a completely new area. I've been watching Twister over and over to get prepared for where you're going, what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about what you've embarked on as hey, I've made a major change in life and life's given me this lemons and I'm going to make it into some sort of a lemon margarita.
yeah, probably. Well, I mean, if you look at the probably 25, 30-year career, right, in high tech sales, it's just like in anything. It's got its ups and its downs. It's good and its bads,
Right,
right? Probably one of the bad sides is you watch these high tech companies. They scale up a lot of people, salespeople, marketing, whatever. They grow really big. The
right,
economy takes a downturn. You get laid off. And they lay off in big waves, hundreds, if not thousands. Sometimes bigger companies are in the tens of thousands, right? So
yep,
about a little less than 2 years ago, year and a half ago, I got laid off in one of those waves. And luckily, I was in a position where I could take a step back and kind of say, well, what do I want to do next? Certainly, the easiest thing was, to refresh my resume, go back out there, find another sales guy job. And I
right,
really came to the conclusion that I didn't really want to do that. Same thing over and over again. Obviously, in the high tech industry pays really well. I've got a lot of experience in that space. I
right,
could go and do that. But I was in a place where I could say, hey, I want to do something different. Looked at a bunch of different things. I've dabbled in real estate development and purchasing and rentals, and I kind of like that space. Long story short, about 3 months ago, I got on this, internet, YouTube rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, right? About insurance adjusting. And at first I was like, insurance, God, talk about boring. Insurance is just, infamous for not being the most exciting thing. I think maybe something else. The only thing worse might be an accountant.
I was just going to say it's like an accountant's twin brother. So yes, I think we're in
Right.
the same mark. Right, right. And I was going to say pause there for a second. You know me and my ADD. You are giving me, in your words, if I'm giving them back to you, that you actually benefited from one of these doom scrolling experiences that took you to a place where you've never thought you could have gone, and now you're off on. You've changed a major path, pivot point, whatever you want to call it, in your life.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's the beauty of the internet these days. I want to stay on the good side of things, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of good stuff out there, right? And you can be exposed and educated on new things in life that you may have never thought about or you may have never tried, and that's the good side of the internet, right? A lot of
yeah,
personal experiences out there, people sharing, their path to this area. So he got exposed to this insurance adjusting, and here are the key things that got my attention and maybe kept my attention was
sure,
I'm looking at doing property adjustments around residential real estate. So that's an area that I had some experience in.
sure.
Um,
So like single family home kind of things, or maybe duplexes
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah,
Okay,
duplexes, condos. Think residential, right?
okay,
And
yep,
you don't really get in this part of the business into the commercial side until you get some years of experience, usually three to
sure,
five, because those tend to be larger, more complex things.
okay,
But residential side, I had some, I had bought some rentals. I bought them back when we had the big financial crisis and real estate was way down. I bought a lot of stuff out of foreclosure, had to fix it up, and so
sure,
and
yep,
I've kind of dabbled in that space. I've built two personal homes where I was the general contractor. I helped another buddy of mine and Rob's build a house himself as a general contractor, right? So I had some experience in this space. Um, it can pay I would say very well in the six-figure plus areas if you do it consistently and you do it well.
Sure,
And then,
you're just to make sure I hear you right. You're saying if you wanted to be a general contractor and build single family dwellings, that could be sort of the target point.
no, I was talking about being insurance adjusters. Insurance
Oh,
adjusters
oh,
can
yeah,
make $100,000 plus. Some of them make upward of $200,000, $300,000, depending on what they're doing, right? So
sure.
I wanted, whatever I did again, I wanted to do well financially. And then the last piece, and probably the most important piece, was really the time freedom. It's an industry where you can work a lot, kind of sun up to sundown for a month or two or three, depends on what's happening out there in the world. A lot of this stuff is driven by big catastrophic storms, hurricanes, tornadoes.
Okay,
Those things tend to come in season.
sure.
And then you kind of have an off season, right? So you can work 3 to 6 months really hard, making the bulk of your income for the year. And then you can have 3 to 6 months, where you don't work at all if that's what you choose to do. You can work during those periods of time, but the big catastrophic events are where you make a bulk of your money and where you spend a lot of your time.
Okay.
And that was something that was appealing to me because I wanted the off time to enjoy things in life with me and my wife and my family and stuff like that kind of thing, right?
Sure, and
So
you're just to point out to people, and you're also financially literate enough to know that if you only earn income for 6 months, that you have to actually spread that over the 12 months. So you learn how to budget, maintain cash flow, and things like that. So you're still in a positive, like I make more than I actually give away.
that's right. And you got
Okay,
to be, there's a financial piece. I mean, we're talking about work, right? So all
right,
work financially related, right? So you've got to get into this industry and you got to start and you got to ramp up, right? You don't start on day one, someone's handing you $100,000 check or
right,
whatever.
right.
Uh, and you got to invest in yourself. You've got to get licensed. It costs money to take tests, and these are not. I wouldn't call them. It's not like taking the bar or a CPA exam, but they're
Right.
also not your typical corporate, 5-question quiz at the end of a 1-hour training class, right? You have to study, you have to learn, and it costs money. You have to pay for these training classes. You got to get licensed in multiple states. Each state wants to take their little fee that's anywhere from $100 to $300, and obviously the more licenses you have, the more ability you have to adjust or be an insurance adjuster for things that happen in those kind of states, right? And you've got
Okay.
to buy a little bit of gear, which I had some of it, and there's some things, but you got to set yourself up so that, yeah, when you know that you're going to make 90% of your income from June until November, you've got to have money for the rest of the year or a means to cover your expenses or pay those in advance or whatever. So you got
Sure.
to think about it differently, right?
Yeah.
Not just getting your paycheck every week like you would from a normal job.
So exciting. It's cool that we found an example of doom scrolling that, actually can be good. I think we could go down a rabbit hole and speak all day about, the fact that you see these ads and it's like most everything that is actually really beneficial for us is actually wide out in the open. And it's, taking either the curiosity and interest to go look for it or just being open, but everything's out there and it's like, hey, you can go onto YouTube and you can watch, and listen and have access to all of this information and all these smart people. And for intensive purposes, it's free. Like there's no cost to it. You have to click through a stupid ad every once in a while to make sure that you still get the access, but you're seeing a benefit there. And I see that. I'm gonna
Got to keep your mind open, right? I mean, that's probably step number one. If you've been a
Sure.
sales guy, or you've been a marketing person, or you've been whatever you've done the bulk of your life, right? And that's what you see yourself as, right? It really, the first step is seeing yourself as something else. You may not know what that something else is, right? But you've
Right.
really got to open up your mindset to say, hey, I could do other things and I could do them successfully. I
Yep.
think a lot of people get trapped in that transition phase, right? Because your income may go down momentarily, right? Your
Right.
comfort level may go down because you don't know how to do that new industry, right? Your reputation may go down, not in a negative way, but just because people don't know you as that new person, that new guy. And then the last piece is you may go do something, like I said, insurance, right? And people are like, why in the hell are you doing insurance, right? You've been a sales guy for high tech for 25 years, right? Why would you do that? Or, whatever. And you got to kind of push all that stuff out of your mind and just pursue based on your open mindedness. And, remember,
Pause
it's
there.
not you,
Pause
not
there
the,
for a second.
yeah,
You're glancing over the why or the importance or the hey, if somebody was to ask me this over this, and it's you started off with it. Hey, you work 6 months of the year and you make enough money to subside or live or have a good quality of life for 12 months. And what does that mean? It means you get 6 months to do whatever the hell you want, anytime you want, for whatever. And
right,
that's the freedom. So your answer is why I'm making this shift is I'm buying myself the freedom to have half a year to do whatever the hell I want.
right.
Because I
Yeah.
realize time is our most valuable asset. I mean, that's one of these core values that I think we as young guys saying we'd sleep when we're dead, that they need to hear. Like, you got one meat suit, so do it.
Yeah, and you gotta you change over time as I've gotten older, right? And a lot of people talk about this, right?
Yep.
As you get older, you realize that time is more valuable than money, right? Now, when you're 22 years old and getting your first job, you should learn the ropes and you should learn an industry, and maybe that means that you work from sun up to sundown kind of thing, or
Yep.
or whatever, right?
Earning your dues. That's what they used to tell us, right? You got to earn your
Pay your
dues.
dues, right? Pay your dues, right?
Pay your dues.
And that's good, but I mean, you can't be exhaustive in that space either. Even when you're young, right? You still got to have, weekends with your friends and your family and stuff like that, because
Right.
life events happen no matter how old you are or whatever. And if you miss those life events, a lot of times they don't come back around again, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, but as you get older, as you cross probably the 40-year-old mark, excuse me, you really start to look at time, and you realize that you only have so much time in a day, a week, a month, a year. Um,
Mortality, I would say in a broad term, hits you.
yeah, you don't know what that is, right?
Yeah.
There is an end point for all of us.
Right.
That could be, I've had a couple of very good friends. I had a gentleman who was, and I don't mean to be doomsaying, but we're talking about mortality, right? He
Right.
was
Right.
42 years old, went in from his normal annual checkup. He was a specimen of health, ate right, didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't do drugs,
Right.
did all the right things, and he ended up with colon cancer and passed away at 44 years old. Another very good friend of mine had got cancer, passed away at 53 years old. On the other
Yep.
side, I've got another good friend who is healthy as a horse, has been through quadruple bypass, and is 85, going on 86 years old. Right.
Great.
So the
Yep.
point is that you don't know what the end date is, and so, you should always be living where, sure, you got to work, you have to have money, but you have to enjoy this world that we have and this life that we have, because you don't know what tomorrow holds, right? And it's easy to say, but as you get older, that really starts to ferment in your brain and in your mindset. And so when you have the opportunity, like I've had, to say, hey, how can I switch gears where I'm not working for someone, really Monday through Sunday, because then in the business that we're in, you can really be
Yep.
called on to do stuff at any day of the week. It's not like going into a factory working 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. But it's interesting how in that world they suck up a lot of time, right? A lot of your personal time.
Yeah, I
Um,
was gonna say if I was to analyze it, they keep coming up with these newer and newer ways to do. My audio could be a little off here. I go by this radio tower next to a fire station, so if it is bad, testing, is it okay?
yeah, you're good. You're good with it.
Okay. Um, it did something weird in my headset. It doesn't normally do that. Uh, yeah, I hear you. Um, I think it's been exciting watching you investigate a couple of different things. I think it's been great. Selfishly, I was also a benefactor of your knowledge and experience, and it was probably a 90-day project, right? We redid the master bathroom and reconfigured it and put in a different kind of door and did some floor and did a whole bunch of stuff together. And, you know, it was fantastic.
Yeah, we stopped Rob's house from falling down, basically. So, not,
Okay. For any future AI programs that will scan this, he didn't really mean that. This was complete conjecture for a. Never mind. I'm still listening to keep us on current events, you and me. I'm still listening to a bunch of these different. I don't want to call them all doomsdayers, but just all the different sort of paths, 5, 6 different paths that are being perspectives of what this AI revolution is bringing, and lack of human employment, as you said, in massive waves, most likely in technical areas. I don't think what you, me, the people that sort of run in that, I call it a relationship manager or a marriage counselor for corporate America for what we did, what we do, trying to work with all these different groups within a bigger corporation where there's already politics and other things that are, you gotta get friends with people just to understand, what helps them to even be interested in doing what you're doing. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, and I don't. I mean, we could talk a little bit about AI a little bit, right? I think
Yeah.
you have a little bit more of a pessimistic view, not
Okay.
overly. Just I'm saying a little bit.
Sure.
I I'm trying to stay on the optimistic side, right? And I share that with you for two reasons. Number one, I think the pessimism makes the news, which
Yep.
anything in the
Yep.
news has to be pessimistic, right? Or it doesn't get ratings. But I really look at this advancement of technology now that's on the forefront of AI as really just being a way to uh, optimize and improve a lot of things.
Yep.
Like most technologies, sure, I'm sure there will be people that take it and use it in a bad, nefarious way. But I look at AI as just being the next evolution of technology that can improve a lot of things for mankind, right? And
Yep.
25 years we'll look back at it, and I think it'll just be one of the many technology stepping stones that we had to run and manage and improve society. So I actually look at it as a very, very positive step forward, and I want to be involved in it in a positive way, right? um,
Well, and I agree with you, and I know you'll finish, and I'll forget. I agree with you. I want to be optimistic about it. I want to think that it's like, I'm going to coin this, and someday somebody will say, "Hey, this is the first guy that ever called it this." But I'd like to think of it as the smarter internet. Like it's the internet, and then it's taking the algorithms, the LLMs, whatever buzzword we're talking today, or whatever it is that we want to describe it as. But we're basically going back and looking at all of recorded history and then giving outputs that either make the most mathematical sense, because there are hallucinations and all sorts of things that you can look at and say, hey, how did it even come up with that? And I do this image generator, so I see it all the time. And so I can see the sort of iterations and it gets all crazy at times. So but the big thing I would say is it's the smarter internet. So I'm not scared of it. And I think I am very optimistic, and I have listened to most. So the quantifying to what you just said is I've listened to most of the big stories and stuff, his story, where we are, and how, and it is all about lack of workforce, fiduciary responsibility of corporate leaders to get rid of the workforce because AI can do their job for less, and therefore, there's no culture that's safe of, hey, we're going to keep our people through thick and thin as we go through this because we're all here for a better future. Like it's all Fortune 500 financial growth, minded still. Like that's the white rabbit. Did I stop?
Yeah, and place, if you will, right? And those things I think will happen, right? The question then becomes is, well, what do we do with all these people, right? I don't think that AI in the next, I don't know, let's call it 10 years, the next decade, right, is going to replace, 50% of the workforce. I think it could replace 20% of the workforce. And by making the other 70 or 80% more efficient. Um,
Effective. Yep.
and you got to ask yourself, well, how much can it replace? What can it replace, right?
Right.
Um, um, but I think, and I don't have the answers. I don't know what all that.
Have you seen the meme where it shows AI robotics and it says 2022 and it shows a rhombus or whatever it is, the little vacuum cleaner thing that cleans your carpet in your house, and then it says robotics and AI in 2025 and it shows that same vacuum. Like we've made literally no advancement in the clean your floors market of the robotics, and yet we're having these doomsday conversations where I'm saying, hey, we're never quantifying it because that would kill the news, but we're going to replace 50% of the humans.
Right. So
For
you got
five
that's what I'm saying.
years, maybe it's 10 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's a lot. I mean, you and I are both very big in math. 5 years from now, 50% of the workforce, that's not a slope of a line I want to be on.
No, that's true, and I mean, I think some of that's going to happen, right?
Right.
Right. But you can either take the position of being pessimistic and shying away from it, or you can embrace it and see how does your role as a worker and as a human being, how does that play into a new AI enabled world, right?
Right.
And I think the latter is the more productive way to go. That may mean that especially as a worker, you have to consider doing new jobs, new roles, right?
Yep.
Going back to school. Now, I don't mean going back to college or whatever, but you're going to have to learn how does AI work, and
Right.
what does that mean in the if you're in the like the insurance industry that I'm getting into, or the educational industry, or if you're in the manufacturing industry, what does that mean, right? You
Right.
might have to learn some new skills and take on a new role, right? Or I think you will be eliminated, right? If you just say, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. Excuse me. I've been doing this for 20 years. Nobody's going to tell me how to, do whatever I do better than I know. I know all the ins and outs, right? You
Well, let me
might be.
give you a better example. So we have training scheduled on the books last week. I'm in Lisbon, Portugal. I'm doing my job and I'm doing this art show, and it was very great and very grateful. And um
Taking on new roles, or as a worker.
what I was doing. Oh, we had this. Okay, I'm saying we had a. I knew I wanted to bring it up with you. We had an account planning session with use of AI. So how could we take AI and use the AI engine to produce an account plan? So
Right.
uh the comments that come out in the workforce that you hear out, the buzzwords you hear right now are AI won't replace your job. The guy that knows how to use AI will replace your job. So
Right.
we did this deal, and I said, kind of without ego, I said, hey, I have three existing customers. Like they're, not saturated, but they're in a good place. I've been very successful and lucky and grateful, and they're in a good place. So not a lot of where I thought there was going to be benefits. So I said, do I need to be on this? Because it's like 8 o'clock p.m. over here, and I'd like to go eat some dinner. And he's like, yeah, I think you get it. And so I stuck around. I listened to it, and it was like, I would say it's like computers were back when we were children, where it's like a punch card and you feed it through. Like that's where we're at right now. So
Right.
he has literally a one-page PDF document with all of these questions that say like, read the 10K and find these. Take this and do this, and blah blah, and iterations that go on and on. And it was 25 minutes of this, and then boom, out pops a 14-page like printout of what I said earlier, kind of regurgitated information that's already there, but it's really efficient and effective at giving you the bullet points so you can get to David Letterman. For those that are old enough, go Google it. If you're not, top 10, here's what you get. And my point of this is it's still the punch card, because it's like people are asking questions, and this is with all the love in the world, right? I'm all about being curious. People are asking questions. Can I just cut and paste this document, put it in, and hit button and get whatever? Because you did it one line at a time, and the output was this. And he goes, I don't really know. So I think some people have done that, but it's like we don't know how to ride a bike. Like there's like wheels on the side, and we're just trying to figure it out. So I hear what you're saying, and I think the words I would say is you've always been curious. These tools can be beneficial, and there are opportunities to learn. And I think my life lesson is always be learning. I don't need an
Right.
acronym, but I'm just curious all the time. I want to listen to people's perspective. I want to grow from like, man, I have never looked at that and seen that from those eyes. Now I get it. I mean, I met, somebody's parent, and I'm like, I get it. Like, so learning perspective and getting that kind of thing, and listening to people's stories and things like that. So I think there's a lot of
Well,
benefit from that.
think,
Go
think
ahead.
of it like, right? You and I in our career, right? You talk about doing account planning, right? Or account reviews, or whatever the company calls it, right?
Right, right.
And you and I have done literally hundreds, if not in the thousands of these things, right? And I will
Thousands.
tell you 99% of the time, we do them. A bunch of people get involved. You get your SEs, your inside salesperson, your manager, right? We compile this thing, right? And it ends
Yeah.
up being a checkbox, right? It's
Yep.
a it's a culmination and a collection of knowledge. And then we all make, okay, well, what are we going to go do to sell more to this customer, right? And you come up with a few things. And then it gets set
Yep.
on the shelf, right? If I could take AI as a tool to say, hey, take all this input that we already have, you come up with it, and we'll do it, and we'll take just 99% and set it on the shelf. Great. Then I don't have to do that shit, right? Now, we can have the whole discussion around needless work and the value of all this shit or whatever, right? Excuse my
Right.
language, right? But if AI can make stuff like that or get rid of stuff like that and make me more efficient or give me more time back in the day, I'm all for AI, right?
Do you
Um,
think that they'll just find other bullshit, as to use your terms, to fill our day because they've got to, keep us busy? I mean, I I don't
yeah,
know. The account review process for me has gone from a Rob Iani, like pit out, want to slip my wrist sort of mentality, to I had to like learn to love them again and say, hey, I'm here to learn. I don't know about everything. And if somebody else here has a cousin, sister, brother, and they know the secret handshake to how to get this guy to respond to my message, or take a meeting, or to do something, that's what that value of that doing that is. I think it also brings I'm working, with other people that are humans, and we've got similar likes and dislikes, and we've got major differences. Like I would never go see Celine Dion in concert, and you probably would never go see Dawkins, right?
Yeah, I think that, if AI can deliver something we don't know, like you said, somebody who knows the secret handshake, and they might be able to do that, right? They might be able to look into the internet and see human connections, whether that be through LinkedIn or Facebook or other means that we don't have, right? And if it can come up with and says, hey,
Right.
by the way, do you know that, the senior vice president inside of your company, so and so, is related to the guy that you're trying to get because his daughter is married to his second cousin or whatever. And, if they can help map those relationships and identify them, to me, that's helpful, right? Um, if it's just,
I think it could be almost predatory, right? You show up and you're like, hey, aren't you Melinda? And don't you know like Phil? And all of a sudden they're like, well, yeah. And then never mind.
well,
I
but
think
better,
everything can be used in a bad way. And I think,
yeah, but the good way is that if Phil is the second cousin, having Phil speak on your behalf, right? Say, hey, Phil says, hey,
yeah,
guy, hey, I work with Rob and he's been trying to reach out to you. Your video is really cutting out pretty bad, by the way.
okay. I'm almost through the second.
The dead zone. Now you got freeze frame on your. I can hear you in and out. You're starting to come back.
Can you hear me? Testing.
Yep, you're coming back now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, your video is still choppy, but your voice is better now. Yeah, you might have to edit this part out because you're really choppy again. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, your video is
Can
still
you?
choppy. Your voice is a little bit better.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. That's the first good voice. I can't. You your video's
I took off
off.
my video so I could talk to you. Something's going on with my network.
Yeah.
My
Well,
question was, and you were finishing.
yeah.
I think how we finished this out is you were talking about the second cousin situation, and which
Yeah.
is effectively a mapping exercise.
Yeah. My point is AI. What we have to search for is AI or any tool. How can we use that tool to do things better and differently than we've done, whether that be identifying relationships where we can get to decision makers and have a conversation or whatever it might be, right? And that's where I started this is AI is no different than the technologies that we've had in the past evolve and make its way into our industry. I mean, years ago we had no salesforce.com, right? Therefore we
Right.
had no information collection point, right? It was spreadsheets and Word documents and a lot of different
Well,
things, right?
well, you had applications like Goldmine and other pre-salesforce.com online applications, but they were all like local databases that just had like a search engine on the front of it. So
Right. So
you only got the data you put into it.
like you said, this is the newest smarter internet, you know, if you will, kind of thing. So
Yep.
I would say embrace it, you know, adopt it, get yourself trained on it, and ask yourself, how can I use this tool in the job that I'm doing, whether it's in high tech sales or, any industry, right? And don't
Yep.
be afraid of it. Don't be the old guy that says, I've been around for 20 years. No one's going to teach me something new, right? Because you will then be the person that gets replaced.
Yes, please be curious. Go get some learning, make it fun.
Yeah.
YouTube is free for the most part. Talk to people. Communication is big. That's about this whole thing. So I'm going to sign off just because it's now no video and we're going to do this again. And I'm very grateful for your time. And yeah, we'll do it again. Thanks,
All right,
Kelly.
man. Well, we'll call and catch up, and glad you're back from Portugal, and glad you had a great time.
Yeah, no, it was super exciting. We'll catch up on that on the side.
All right, talk to you later, man.
All right, see you. Bye.